What is up? The NBA Finals are officially set. As we got the Celtics, we got the Mavs. And if you don't live in Boston or Massachusetts, is there any reason you should be cheering for the Celtics?
No.
Wow,
Yeah, absolutely
Who wants
not.
to see
Let's
the
get some
city?
acapella with that. Like,
I mean, objectively, who wants to see Boston win the title if you don't live in Massachusetts?
Or let's give the caveat: this is a FanDuel podcast. Or if you obviously have money on the Celtics, that's the only reason.
Who would bet on Boston
Well,
right now? Like,
if we
there's
go-
no value whatsoever in betting Boston.
Right now, there is no value to
Correct.
bet on Boston. 100%.
But there is.
Oh,
But there is.
hold on, I'll give a shout out. If you got Boston early, then great. You probably got them at 4 or 5 to 1.
Let's go back to the very first episode of this podcast. I think the first bet I gave out, and then a lot of missed since then. But yeah, I'm
There you
glad I
go.
did. So my favorite over, and I would say this is probably a square play, although right now it is even money on FanDuel. Celtics over 54.5.
So glad you did. Glad you did, Hein. You got it earlier, right? So at least you have a receipt to show for it. But if you bought it up to this point now, within the last months, yeah, you're a loser for betting on Boston.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of value there.
There's no value in betting Boston to win straight up. As we will discuss, there are other ways to bet Boston if you're feeling frisky. If you think they're going to win, like, we can get into it. I mean, based on everything we've seen, Boston has absolutely plowed through the East. They've faced pretty much no one. They've dodged a lot of bullets. But right now, betting them at value just to win, it's just not existent. But there are other ways. So, you like Jason Tatum?
I do.
MVP?
I think he's going to win finals. Okay, well, are we getting into this?
let's get into it. Let's do it.
I'm going with
Blend
Boston
it.
to win the series.
Yeah,
that's
so-
where I'm at right now. So
I think all three of us are on Dallas. Are we on Dallas?
So I'm so torn with this series.
I'm torn.
I looked at it as a
good
as a
matchup.
true 50-50.
It's a good matchup.
And I don't think there's any way you can bet Boston at that price. So because I have a future already, I'm gonna bet. I have bet Dallas, and I've also tried to get got a little greedy because hey, that's what we do. Luka MVP, just to get a little plus 210 or plus 200 instead of plus 180.
So I do agree. I think that's the way you bet this series.
Yeah.
Right? Like, other than, like, if you think these teams are even, you should be slamming Dallas
yeah.
at plus 180. Like, that is incredibly, like, good value there. They have the best player in the series.
Yeah.
Like, I think objectively we can
Of
say
course.
that. Luka Doncic is a better player
Yes.
than Jason Tatum.
Not if you're from Boston, they win.
You're from Boston. But, like, I think if you do think Boston will win, I think Tatum is a very good bet. However, I would say a lot of people who thought that he would
Oh,
win
yeah.
in the Eastern Conference MVP, which
Okay,
is
so,
a 5-4 vote.
Answer for a Bontemps.
Shout out to Jason Tatum. I think even though the line's minus 900 for Boston to win this series,
yeah.
minus 220 for Tatum to be the Eastern Conference MVP.
It is my honor and it's my privilege, Jaylen Brown.
I get why. I know why you're doing this bet. I think it's a great bet because there's no way in hell that the writers will allow Jaylen Brown to get a second MVP trophy within weeks for this team that has been led by the two of them together. I mean, look, unless Brown completely outperforms him, that's a scenario that is plausible. But he didn't have better stats than him in the Eastern Conference Finals. Probability suggests he's probably not going to outperform Tatum drastically from a stat standpoint.
Yeah, better clutch moments.
Better clutch moments. Yeah. So what I'm just saying is, if Tatum and Brown are once again similar in terms of production, it would be a huge FU if the writer's like, Jaylen Brown, MVP, one more time. Tatum, you're not the leader of this team. So I'm with you there.
yeah, my logic is this: he's the best player on the Celtics. Anyone who argues that Jaylen Brown is a better player than Jason Tatum is out to lunch. I'm sorry. Brown is allowed to play the way he does because of Jason Tatum.
Yes.
So Tatum, he, arguably kind of got screwed on the Eastern Conference Final MVP.
He did.
It was close. My logic is if he plays up to his standard and I like Boston to win, then he will win Finals MVP because they're not going to not give it to him one more time.
It's a reasonable way to bet Boston if you think Boston's
yes, it's minus 120 as opposed to paying over 2-1 to bet Boston.
Yeah.
Should Boston be this much of a favorite?
No chance. Well, look at the gauntlet Dallas just went through.
Fair.
Why are we not looking at that like, you know what, this is much closer to like maybe they should be Dallas plus 150, Boston around that minus 160-ish range?
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense to me. And this goes to the bigger question of kind of Boston has sort of ruined these playoffs because they haven't gone through anybody.
Not their fault.
That people were
Not
injured.
their fault.
But after what we just saw Dallas go through in the West, why is it not closer?
Look, if you want to track line movement, look, Dallas was what 220 to open, 250 to open, and it keeps coming down. Now it's on 184, 188. So I think what that tells you is nobody is willing to bet Boston, and it's because it's probably more 50-50 than what odds makers are setting it up as. And at those prices, it's not worth it to bet Boston at this point. You have to find some other way to tweak that bet in order for you to get closer to 50-50.
Yeah.
So it makes sense why Dallas is getting so much action.
Here's my main thing though. In playoffs, when buckets are much harder to get, you want someone who can go get you buckets. Dallas has arguably the 2 best players in terms of bucket getters in crunch time in this series.
Fair point.
You're making a skeptical face.
No, that's exactly why I'm betting them. So look, I think Boston's a better team.
Yeah, for hands down, I don't think anybody would.
I think
Definitely top heavy. Yeah.
Luka's the better closer, right? And
Kyrie's the better closer than Tatum too. Tatum's one of the worst clutch players in the NBA.
So Kyrie's got a track record too. So I just think these games aren't going to be. I mean, I don't think they're going to be. Actually, this is another pivot. How many blowouts do you think they're going to be in the finals?
I think
great question.
Dallas plays blowout-proof basketball for the most part.
Do you think they're going to be blowouts in this game?
That's me throwing a dart. I have no idea. There's some games where a team can hit 25 threes and blow the other team
the way
out.
Boston
Right,
plays,
that's
they're-
how Boston plays.
I just get a feeling there's going to be a lot of tight games in this, and Dallas just feels more equipped as a clutch time, 5 minutes to go type of team than Boston.
Well, they have a dude who can get a good shot every single time down the floor, whereas Boston, we've seen them in these clutch moments from occasion that they just kind of do a lot of one-on-one stuff. It doesn't look as nice as it does in the previous 3 quarters. I think it does come to closing time, man. And
It's interesting that
Luka.
everyone's looking at Boston with this half-empty approach, and everyone's half full on the Mavs because Boston won 64 games in the regular season.
Yep.
They're 12-2 in the playoffs. They have the 10th best net rating of all time in the playoffs. And people are like, I don't know if they're good. I don't know if they're good now.
they haven't really been tested.
I get it.
But they haven't fully been tested.
My
yet.
thing is, I think this series is going to resemble the OKC Dallas series, not the Minnesota one. And I think Boston is just a better version of Oklahoma City with more experience.
So you think Boston's going to be able to take out someone? Let's just say, if you're using that series as a reference point, Kyrie Irving.
That to me is the difference.
Kyrie Irving averaged 15 points against OKC.
Yeah, 'cause
you don't think Drew Holiday and White could
they're
do a better job on him?
J-Dub did a great job on Kyrie in the second. Though they could throw someone like Jaylen Brown on him, even Tatum. They do have Drew. They got Derek White. I do think matchup-wise, this might be Kyrie's toughest series. I do think Luka at this point is matchup-proof.
He's matchup proof.
Yeah.
He can do whatever you throw at him, he will solve.
Yeah.
You want to switch a big onto him, he's going to rain step backs. Smaller guy, I'm going to bully him and get into the mid-range. Fine. You want to trap me? Open shooters or a roller.
I guess
There's no answer for
In
him.
theory, Kyrie's the dude that you can just kind of throw one of these guys on him, say we're not going to collapse the defense on this guy. We're just going to let him try and eat one-on-one against one of our elite perimeter defenders and live with the results. Maybe, try and take the ball out of Luka's hands. If you got PJ Washington, hey man, do what you did against OKC. Hit all your threes again.
Yeah.
We don't believe you can.
Yeah.
Or we think we can hit more than you can. I think the minutia of this is the strategy that comes into play here is actually super interesting. I actually agree with that idea that Kyrie might be the guy who's a little more handcuffed in this series comparatively
I think
to
that's how
Minnesota.
Boston needs to attack this series too.
They have the dudes.
Let Luka eat and just throw one of those elite defenders at Kyrie.
And hold on, I'm operating under the pretense that Kristaps Porzingis is healthy and
he'll
playing
be-
in game
he'll
one.
be- he'll be
I know
fine.
he hasn't been announced
Over a
at the
month.
time of this taping, but let's assume he's in
the
game
whispers
one,
were
right?
that he could have been there for game 4 potentially, but there was just no reason for
So
it.
Boston's like super battle tested, right? Went to the finals in 2022. Those guys lost. Like I think they've been in 6 of the last 8 Eastern Conference finals. So these guys have been there. I like dudes that have been there before and have failed. I feel like that kind of just helped. So if you're arguing Boston, Drew Holiday's played in finals, won a finals with Milwaukee, although that was a fraudulent title. Like, so there is precedent here that says these guys have been there. They're not going to be rattled by the finals. They're not going to be rattled by the stage. So they have that to build off of, whereas Dallas does not, other than maybe Kyrie Irving. Luka Doncic has been playing big games since he was a teenager.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think anyone.
worried about
looking at
Luka.
like an 18
Luka-
I don't think anyone's concerned about
Exactly.
him feeling the pressure of the
But you worry
finals.
about some of their other dudes.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Daniel Gafford, could be some.
Lively's
might-
still a rookie.
Lively's a
Let's
rookie.
see
Didn't
how
play like one.
let's see how their bigs do in this series,
Let's see how
right?
the
If
bigs
Porzingis
do.
is hitting threes,
So-
then you have to figure out what are we doing with
So
that.
let's get into the minutia of that because I think that's the most interesting thing. Kristaps Porzingis, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the Kyrie versus Boston stuff. There's a lot of storylines there. Porzingis, once upon a time, played in Dallas. Rick Carlisle refused to give him post-ups. Turns out now he's like the most efficient post-up player in the league,
Which is ironic.
A very
Yeah,
ironic,
yeah, it
like
is.
twist of fate there. Do you think Porzingis, offensively, I think no doubt he helps Boston. Makes them elite offensively, 5 out
Yeah.
with their team. It's unbelievable. I actually think, do you think there's a chance he's actually a liability?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I mentioned this on a previous pod. I think he's unless he wasn't playing in this series, I wouldn't feel comfortable betting Boston. I think he creates a lot of mismatches with a lot of the stuff he does in the post. So what Boston does with a lot of this one-on-one basketball we talk about is they move the ball around, but they look for situations where they have like a very clean matchup for whoever it is that's in the post that has like a huge height mismatch or somebody speed advantage on the wing where like small guys got a big on the outside. I think they found really good effectiveness using Porzingis in kind of little spots here and there when they have like a very clean seal that they can get him up to get easy buckets, but they're not asking him to do much. That's the thing.
If I'm Dallas, I live with that.
Yeah.
Porzingis post-up offense, go crazy.
They're not asking him to do much though. He
He's
doesn't.
a fourth. That's the danger with Boston is that there's just so much balance across the
Yeah,
court,
there is-
right?
He's the ultimate luxury for them.
Yeah.
And honestly, it doesn't really matter what big you have. Luka's going to get him on a switch
So
and he's going to
that's
cook
it.
him.
So-
It doesn't matter who it is, though.
But
Yeah.
that's the point. So if you're going to live with Porzingis playing 30-plus minutes, Luka and Kyrie just identifying every single player that has Porzingis guarding them to set that screen, and now you're forced to hedge, trap,
but that's
blitz,
where
or
you have-
switch every time down the floor. I worry about that because I think Porzingis coming off.
But you have
like,
Horford on the bench, though. I know as old as
Horford will also
I know,
get cooked.
I know it does. I just feel like you have Horford off the bench. If Porzingis is really getting burned, you at least have a quality big that you can put out there who's a good defender. And yeah, he's old. He's not as fleet of foot as he once was. It doesn't matter who you have as a big. Dallas is going to try to get you in a pick and roll and is going to try to eat off
It's
of
the
that.
toughest thing to figure out, right? Because sure, you can put their weakest defender, their big man, into pick and roll schemes all the time. What you're then doing is you're forcing the other 4 elite defenders on Boston to fly around, to like do what they do defensively, to cover multiple areas defensively.
which they can.
But,
which
and
they
that's where you
can.
can double recover.
So
Double
that
recover.
could be an idealistic thing where it's just like, Luka will just put Porzingis in pick and rolls all day, make them switch, make them trap. But you're kind of playing into Drew Holiday being a space eater. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum flying around. Like it's a tough catch-22, man. I just don't know what happens.
We might get some Tatum guarding Luka,
Which would be great.
that mano a mano, right?
Great. I think you're gonna
I
see
mean-
switches across the board. If you're Boston, like you gotta leverage these guys. Like Drew Holiday, he's gonna see Luka. He's gonna see Kyrie.
Well, Tatum, he's probably the best defensive forward in the league at this point. I mean, depending.
Okay, let's see Kelly
Boston,
Oubre.
I mean, depending
Boston was what, second or first in defensive efficiency this
He's
year?
been greatly improved.
He's big. He's big, right?
Big, he
so
can move.
he he can move. He can contest. Now he's not going to stop Luka, but there are going to just be a lot of interesting matchups because everyone likes to switch as well.
Yeah.
That's the principle of both these teams,
So-
right?
Yeah.
One interesting thing to me in the first pretty much all through the playoffs, Dallas has faced offenses that were single focus offenses, and now they have to go against a Boston team that can beat you in so
More
many different
egali-
ways.
more
Yeah.
egalitarian.
So is Dallas's defense, which, and I know it's been great, you referenced it before, since that time in March when they changed the starting lineups, it was number 1 in the NBA. This is different though. This is a much different
It's
offense they're up
different.
against.
Yeah, when you look at the matchup data, I think both defenses are running into a team that kind of fits into what they funnel. So, for example, Dallas, they let Minnesota fly from deep. Just Minnesota couldn't hit buckets. Do they want to do that with the Celtics?
no
Like,
chance.
the Celtics are going to burn you, and that's how you're going to get some of these blowouts I'm talking about. And then on the flip side, if you look at how Boston's defense has been all year, they want you to take shots in the mid-range. They funnel everything into the mid. So what are we going to get? Are we going to get Doncic 40 burgers every night?
Maybe.
Like, this might
There's
be...
a tasty Luka to score 50
Yeah,
prop
yeah.
on FanDuel that really caught my eye.
So it might have to be that type of series, and it's the same thing. It's like, hey, do you want Luka Doncic hitting all these step back fadeaways, like little runners here and there? He's proven in the last few games he can hit those now.
Yeah.
Even Kyrie's been hitting some of those,
Yeah.
right? So when you have two guys like that who are so elite in the mid range, and that's what Boston funnels you to do. Like if I'm Coach Joe Mazzulla, I better have like a contingency plan. Same thing for Dallas. Dallas, they've been letting people shoot from deep. They better have some sound plans here because it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, so they've gone up against like Rudy Gobert in the last series, right? Like guys who, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, like you're gonna have to guard those guys out in the perimeter.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to guard Porzingis. Like your strengths now, which was protecting the rim. Like Derek Lively to me is absolutely the key to the series.
Yeah,
if you're
he's a very
Dallas.
interesting part of the
Yeah.
story.
Can you successfully switch onto these perimeter guys over and over? Is Boston going to be okay with Drew Holiday hitting, like, trying to take step backs on Derek Lively, because that's the matchup that they can exploit? I don't know. He's a rookie. He's ascended into a dude who is like becoming just a solid two-way guy.
Net rating. Look at that
rating off
net
the
rating in the
charts.
playoffs,
Good
man.
The
decision-making.
playmaking was
The
unbelievable.
playmaking.
playmaking's amazing.
So you need to keep him on the floor. Can he successfully stay on the floor for Dallas, who's been an absolute monster defensively? Like, okay, so let's go back. I have Dallas plus 1.5 in the series spread. in
Oh,
this
let's
series.
bring up your
Yeah,
5 units. Let's
bring it up. So I think, to me, that's a nice way to be like, I think Boston will win if this thing goes like deeper. I think they're more tested. I think they're deep, and their starting lineup, especially with guys who've been there before. So, gun to my head, I hate to do it. I think I am leaning Boston, but I'm giving myself some Luka insurance.
Sure.
So
Plus 1.5, and then Luka to win MVP, just because if Dallas does win, dude leads in every category, like in the playoffs, leads in every kind of points, rebounds. It's like, you have to bet like that guy.
He
If you're gonna win,
literally
he's the reason.
leads the postseason in points,
Everything.
rebounds, assists,
And everything.
steals, free throws,
Which is
threes.
insane. Which is insane.
So I'll bring up my 5 units here. I will say this: I have similar. I think like Boston to win the series, but I have the Luka insurance of MVP. And as you can see with my units, these are all crazy long shots. This is Boston ruining it, because I think Boston's going to win the series, but there's nothing fun.
no
So
value.
I look at it like I'm just gonna splash. My biggest bet on here is PJ Washington 10 points in every game. And before you give me Wes about how all this stuff can happen, I think it's through what have they played? 17 or 16 playoff games. He's only missed that mark twice, and I think he's hit it in 5 straight. So it's like plus 300 or something. That's a good number. But all of my units are kind of are splashy plays, because Boston has sucked the fun out of betting these finals if you think they're going to win.
It's funny that as we're going through our slips, like, we're all saying the same thing. We all kind of feel Boston's supposed to win this. I don't disagree with that. Okay?
Yeah.
So, Fab, I get why you're betting it. But again, I think there's a case to be made that this is more 50-50 than I think the odds makers are giving it. So that's why I'm trying to take some action on Dallas. But then at the same time, I just think about how Dallas has won some of these games in these playoffs. They steal games here and there. That has to happen.
Yeah.
That's the only
They gotta
way for
steal
them to
one.
win. They have to steal some game they're not supposed to win. That's a narrow path for them to win the championship. But I'd rather put all my eggs in the basket of the guy who's the coldest killer in this entire series.
That's why I'm so
And, like,
conflicted, man. That's what makes this
tough.
so
And
hard
it's
this
tough.
series.
You don't want to be against them.
Yeah, and
You
I
wanna
don't
be.
like to talk
Yeah.
narratives. I usually try to stick numbers, but like this just feels like the beginning of the legend
But
of
you know
like
what?
Luka Doncic.
You know what?
right?
Let me push back on that. Like, it's not an indictment on Luka if they lose a series.
Yeah.
We've seen LeBron lose 6 finals.
Yeah.
That's true.
Great players lose to great teams all the time. So this isn't like if Luka doesn't win, he's not that guy.
Well, maybe he
is
needs to
that
lose
guy.
to then win the next
That's
one.
what
You
I'm
need
saying.
that
So-
cheap pace.
And that's what happened to Boston in
Yeah.
2022. It happened to LeBron against the Spurs his first time around. They got swept. Like,
Exactly.
This
So-
stuff happens.
That
Luka's
Cavs team was
25.
garbage,
With
though.
that
Like,
said,
Luka's
Luka
25.
is
25.
he's a maniac. He's a maniac that we haven't seen this like mentality of I want to rip the souls out of your bodies
love it. That's
in opposing arenas.
What
Like,
else do you
he
want?
lights the building on fire, man.
What else
Like,
do you want
and
from a
he wants
superstar?
reasons to get angry.
And
Like,
you know
he'll
what?
find
Shame
a
on you, Michael Finley. The man just wanted to enjoy a beer after winning
yeah,
the
can we,
conference.
I don't understand this thing. So it was a sponsored thing where Finley took his beer away.
It's a joke, man.
But I know,
Have
but come
fun.
on, man.
I don't know.
Let
I don't
the
know.
man-
Talk to him.
Let the
Finley's
man
right
relax.
here.
The real
Let the
question
man
is,
relax.
why do we have a Michael Finley? Why is this a
moments
thing?
like this.
Why is this a thing? Why? Okay, so I'd earlier said that Boston was deep, right? They're starters. Extremely deep. The best starting 5 in the league, bar none. I think we all
Yeah,
agree, right?
that's hands
Denver
down.
probably gave him a run, but in terms of just sheer talent, they're going to have problems in a couple years keeping all these guys. So I think that's why there is a lot of pressure on Boston. But after that, it falls off a cliff a little bit, man. Like Al Horford, okay, sure, he old.
Luke Cornett.
The unicornet.
Hauser's fine.
Sam,
Hauser's lost his confidence.
But see, I think Pritchard is probably
Peyton
fine in
Pritchard,
this series. I
maybe.
think he's probably fine.
Yeah, it's gonna
right?
be him versus Jaden Hardy, who wins those
Yeah,
minutes.
I mean,
could
what
be a
if
big
Jaden
thing.
Hardy's getting minutes? Pritchard won't.
Yeah.
I worry
Won't be
about-
all right.
Hardy
worry about
Hardy
Boston.
swung a
I
game
know,
last
I
year.
know,
Straight up.
I know.
I worry a little bit about Boston's depth. I worry a little bit if Porzingis isn't fully healthy. If Horford looks old.
You
in
roll
the
those
series.
6 guys 40 minutes.
That's
That's
what I'm
it.
saying. They
42
basically-
minutes,
they basically
43
have
minutes,
and
right?
zero wear and tear.
But this
No
series,
threat on
this
them.
series is spread out nicely too. That you can roll 6 guys that many minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just worry that they, that is something. If you're betting Dallas, it's a thing to focus on, right?
Well,
Yeah.
here's a pushback on it. Like, let's not forget the average age of these teams outside of Drew Holiday. Everyone's young.
Young.
Everybody young.
Yeah.
They're young.
So they can handle 40+ minutes. Like, we need Coach Tibbs out there versus the Bears. No problem.
He would
man.
find a way to run them to the
Yeah,
ground.
they can do it. So it's a good battle between one team that's young, had a clear path. They're gonna play 40+. Whereas like the Mavs, they grinded every step of the way. Like I worry about wear and tear for them.
Well, now
for
Luka
this
has an extra week, for that knee. I know the knee's been flaring up. It's somehow bleeding on the outside every game. I don't really quite
That's a Kurt
understand that.
Schilling catch-up
Here-
situation.
Here's a
Yeah.
question. Who do you think Celtics fans will hate more after the series, Luka or Kyrie?
Oh, well, so they're coming in with the pre-Kyrie hate.
Come on, man. No, that's a stupid. You know why?
Why?
I could think of one prominent reason why they'll hate one guy over the other.
Well,
That's it.
I'm just saying, if you're an opposing fan watching Luka's
The
antics
Luka-
and he's torching your team, you're
They'll find a way to.
But
hate
Luka
Kyrie.
I don't know.
complains-
Luka
Luka
could
with
become
the way
the new
Luka-
villain.
yes.
He could become the new villain.
The way he complains to the refs and the way
Can't
he will
quite
go
see
at that
man.
crowd. Like Connor, cue the video of what
Can't see it.
cue the video, Connor, of what he yelled at that crowd in that game 6. Like
30%. Luka drives on McDaniels with the lean, a foul, and a deuce.
that was amazing, and I could see him doing that at all the Boston players.
But it's a great point with all with all the complaining Luka does, which he will probably it'll rear its head again
No,
in the
of
finals.
course
didn't seem
it
as
will.
bad in the conference finals.
No, I'm
though.
saying now it's the finals, right? And Boston media is gonna eat that.
Oh,
up.
yeah.
They're gonna like, oh, look at this guy, LeBron,
Yeah.
this, that, blah
Yeah.
blah blah, always
Kyrie
whining.
stomped on the stupid leprechaun's face. He lit
Hey,
sage.
show Lucky some respect, man.
He lit sage
What did
in
Lucky
the arena.
do?
There's a lot of beef there,
Yeah.
going back to like when Kyrie was
Well,
like asking to guard Giannis.
But here's
Like,
the
come
thing
on.
too, though. I mean,
They
if
hate
you're
him.
okay, but if you're a Celtics fan, you should have a gripe with Kyrie. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's a lot of revisionist history. I know you love Kyrie, but there's a lot of revisionist history happening here. He's having a great season, but doesn't wipe out 5 years of like, I don't know, intoxicating locker rooms and playing-
questionable
Oh, yeah.
behavior.
The
yeah.
Brooklyn saga, sure.
What about
whatever.
Boston?
The last
He
one
was
was last.
terrible.
Boston was bad. Boston was
I don't
really
care
bad.
about Boston.
Okay, but
right?
I'm
This
just
whole
saying-
pod's about us not giving a damn
I'm
about
just
Boston.
saying. I'm just saying.
Not care.
Hold on, the whole pod's about us not giving a damn about Boston.
Yeah,
Check
we
the
all
slips.
do.
We all have Boston to win the title.
Well, I will say
We are hypocrites.
I like money.
We are
man. I
hypocrites.
like money.
Pre-series for sure, Kyrie, but then by the end of it all,
Yeah.
if it goes bad for the Celtics, I agree with you. I think Luka could become like the new villain in
Hold on,
Boston.
hold on. You came up with a nice exercise in our group
Which
chat.
is what?
Let's rank the best players in this series.
Well, we kind of just did that. Though.
Well,
It's
let's do it for the people, and we'll have a nice little graphic
Okay,
coming up.
okay, number one's Luka, obviously.
Yeah.
Number two's
With a
Tatum.
bullet, like Luka,
Yeah.
with a bullet. Like, how big is that difference between him and Tatum? Is it big? Is it
It's
small?
not that huge, but
I
I,
don't-
think for the course of a playoff series,
I mean, Fab just called him the best defensive forward in the league.
Well, I mean,
So that
he's
has
up,
to factor in.
He's
One of
up,
the
he's
best,
up
yeah.
there. Okay, maybe not number one with a bullet, but he's up there.
Yeah, so
He's up
I
there.
don't think it's fair to give Luka like the super
Yeah.
S tier status and Tatum's a B tier guy.
You know what?
right?
Just another thing
Like-
on Tatum. It's going to be funny that if they do win, people will then look at his career and say, "Wow, 3 All NBA
Yeah.
first teams, NBA champion. He's been in the conference finals 5 times." So
Something's missing.
I-
What's
Well, he's not a
missing?
killer.
It's,
He's not a
it's
killer.
the clutch
He's not a
factor. It's
killer.
the fact that he's
not
so
a killer
bad
like
in the clutch.
Luka.
And
He's
that's
not a
something
killer.
you can't really measure that. It's just something you see. And again, like this is flimsy analysis. Like
it is.
Like what is it? Like okay, you know what? 2022, I will give them a little bit of a break on that. Steph Curry
They
went
shouldn't have been,
supernova.
but they
in
shouldn't
Game
have been
4.
there anyways. Like,
Yeah, but they've made the Eastern Conference Finals 6 times at 8 years.
but then
He's
that-
still,
but
they
doesn't
should
that-
be
he's
there
still
more than
26.
Doesn't that narrative sort of write itself? When Boston wins this title, aren't we going to look at it and be like, they got there so many times. They were the
Yes.
preseason favorite. They had this great regular season. I think we'll be looking back.
There's pressure.
and we'll be a little masked by the fact that all of those stars got injured on their way to the title, and they might have beaten those teams with those stars anyways.
They would have.
They would have.
They
They
would
would
have.
have. Come on, they would
then,
have.
Yeah.
so then maybe what's our opinion of Boston if Jimmy's healthy? Like, you know what I
it's
mean?
probably more of a grind.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
so
fine.
are we then going into this like, Boston's really
Yeah.
toughed it out to get
Yes.
here?
Well, Probably.
I think people are sleeping on how good Indy's offense was, even without Halliburton. They're not easy to guard. They had the
they're not.
second best offense in the league all season. So this idea that they got a really easy
but
series against
did
Indy. It's a little bit false.
But did Boston stole 3 of those games? Indy had a 90+ win probability in the fourth quarter of 3 or 4 games.
History's written by the victors, man.
Yes,
no one
yeah.
remembers.
Well, so there you go. Boston's experience playing out against a team that's been there
Yeah.
for the first time.
But didn't have their best player in clutch moments for like 2 or 3 of those games. Like that's.
But Boston hasn't had Porzingis all playoffs. I'm just saying, like,
Boston's
Don't
D.
get me started. Porzingis has never sniffed any kind of playoff success. Now I find it like as a cog in a wheel.
Yeah, he's a luxury.
I think he is definitely a luxury. But like, I don't know. Do we feel great about Porzingis out on an island defensively?
never seen it. So
Exactly,
yeah.
and that's my point. There's something about this team I just don't quite trust. I don't know what it is. Maybe it is just simply as we haven't seen it this year. We had them hyped up last year.
Yeah.
They go down 3-0 to Miami.
This is their moment. If they don't win this series,
Lot of
it's gonna
pressure.
look.
There's way more pressure on them.
Lot of pressure
But isn't
on
this just
them.
how we always view teams in sports that haven't won or superstars that haven't won? We're more skeptical because we've never seen it. And
But
then
we
once
haven't
we've
seen it with Luka yet. I don't feel the same level of skepticism.
I would say the winning in Europe, where that's the quality
As a
of competition
teenager,
in that
yeah.
as a teenager. He's been in these moments that are arguably as big as the finals.
Didn't
moment.
feel it with Jokic last year either. Like in the finals coming in, like I think a lot of people like were very comfortable with Denver winning it all. Like, it's just there's something off. I don't know what it is. I do need to see them beating good teams down the stretch.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty simple. They don't have the best player in this series, and
Yeah.
that will always cause a stink. It'll always,
Yeah.
until they win it, it'll always cause a stink.
So, but back to the ranking. So they don't have the best player. So if we can say Luka's 1, Tatum is 2. Kyrie,
It's Kyrie or Jalen's
versus
a coin
Jalen.
flip.
Kyrie or
versus-
Jalen.
or, I mean, I'll give it to Kyrie just because, again, I've seen him do
I think
it.
for what you
I think
want in
Kyrie
a playoff
3A.
series, you give it to Kyrie
Jalen
because
Kyrie.
3A,
getting buckets
3B.
in that situation is the hardest. and
Brown's
that's what
much
Kyrie
better
does.
defensively than Kyrie.
He is, but I think
Kyrie's
Kyrie's
had a
better
good. He's had a good
offensively.
series. He's
But
had a
Kyrie-
good.
Then
he's had a
Boston
good
has the
playoff.
next 4 guys.
But that's the thing.
Yeah.
So Boston has the next 4 in whatever order you want. Like you can, however.
Derek
you want to
White, Drew.
Yeah,
You have Dwight over Drew.
Dude,
I got Drew over
I
White.
have White to score 15 in every game this series.
Jalen,
Ultimately,
Drew, White,
it's
Porzingis.
best player against a balanced team.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
That's what it is.
we'll see how that goes.
Well, I think that noise sums it up. That we are done, and to our loyal fans in the comments, we will be going live for one of these finals games. It's either going to be
3 or
game
5.
3 or game 5. So we'll keep you posted on that. But yeah, come watch along with us.